Welcome to World Sikh News. I am Gurleen Kaur, and we have a very special guest today, Senator Baltej Singh. Thank you for accepting the invite for this interview.
Thank you, Gurleen Kaur, for having me, and for World Sikh News for considering my words as part of your sharing with your audience.
Thank you. So, through this interview, we would like to know you more on a personal level and how you feel about your identity and how your experiences have shaped that realization. So, my first question is about your early identity and the promise to your family. So, reflecting on your promise to your late father to keep your hair uncut and wear a turban, how did that pledge shape the idea of faith and personal honor in those early formative years in Canada, and especially when so many advised you to break that promise?
So, knowing where we come from, so I'm born and raised in Malaysia, and faith, family, and community were one thing. It wasn't separate. So my faith and who I am and who my family is are the same thing. It's not a different thing or something that we do on Sundays and then do something different on Mondays. And that's how I was raised. In my home, my father was an avid, community leader. We were poor, but he was very engaged. He had a daily practice that he shared with me. He was very, committed to the principles and values of Sikhi, and he practiced them. And that's where I learned what Sikhi meant. It wasn't just sitting down every day to do Japji, but rather living Japji every day. And I saw that in him, in his actions. I saw what he read in the morning translated into what he did during the day, and how he interacted with people, and how he managed his actions and what he, what he engaged in. And so all of that was, and I often say that he was my first role model and mentor, and that shaped my worldview. That was my understanding of how this world is. Looking at him and how he carried himself, the language that he used, how he interacted with each other, and his values and principles in action. Not just here's what the values are, but in action. And so I wanted to be like him.
Yeah.
He was bigger and larger than life. That's who I, want to be like. And as I said, he was my first mentor, my role model, and who doesn't want to be like their role model? And so when he said to me initially, one of the last few conversations we had was, this is your identity. This is what makes you whole. This is who you are. Don't ever give that up. And I paraphrase some of that because as you mature, one sentence that is, Baltej, अपना जो सिक्खी है, अपनी जो सिक्खी है, ये कदे नहीं कतल करनी, ये कदे नहीं छड़नी हैगी, has become so much more. That just few words, has become my entire life. And so when we came to Canada, and when that question came that you asked of, and I was offered a job, my dream job, and I had to, at that point, make a decision about walking away from my role model, my mentor, my champion, my everything. It wasn't a very hard decision. It was a very easy decision. No, I'm not going to do that. And I've said before that when I look in the mirror, I don't see myself, I see my father. And so this, appearance is a reminder of him to me. And so how do you let that go? How do you walk away from that? How do you betray that? So it was easy for me to have that because, as I said before, we grew up poor, but never knowing that we were poor. We had everything that we needed. We had food, we had clothes, we had a roof over our head. So to say no to a dream job that would have changed our lives, that did change our lives, was easy because, when you've already experienced poverty, when you've already experienced not having a lot, it's okay to not aspire to any of that.
Yeah. So within yourself, you always knew what is the biggest, like what is the most important thing for you. And it was always your faith and your values that you got from your father, which is really impressive. And as you said that family is not something that we do on the weekends. It's like your whole life. So did you, like, once you were in Canada and you started growing up in a Canadian school, did you ever feel yourself at a conflict when you saw that the culture is very different here? All my friends, they don't spend that much time with their family. So did you feel that conflict, and how did you kind of overcome it?
I missed it a lot. Culture and community in Malaysia is very different than how it is here. In Malaysia, the Gurdwara was our second home, if not our first home. So when we came back from school, we would run to the Gurdwara to meet with the Gyaniji, who would be there waiting for us with a big smile on his face and all these sweet drinks for us. And, and then we would together do seva at the Gurdwara. We would do different things, and it was our Gurdwara, it was our home. We could do nothing wrong there. And anytime we did something that was not aligned with how we normally would, so you don't wash your hands and go do jorsa, nobody yelled at you, nobody said, oh my god, you've made this huge mistake. The Gyaniji would just simply come over and say, what do you should always wash your hands before you come to jorsa, so I noticed you didn't do that, go ahead and do that and then come back. And it's a reminder, because no child is trying to, in any way, shape, or form, offend Guruji. Yeah. So as adults and as leaders and as practitioners and as people that have more knowledge, it's our job to, nurture that same love for that space. When I came to Canada, I found it completely different. I found the Gurdwaras here, people, I don't know what it was about, but, there was more yelling and shouting than there was, love and care. You made a mistake and it was like, you've committed a capital punishment, and, you were ostracized. You were yelled at.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because I have been having these conversations at home too, that Shraddha is what matters, right? It's not if you followed the exact right path, but what was in your heart, that's what matters, and Guru knows that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
1000%. We don't need dharma police. Mm-hmm. We don't need that. Our relationship with the Guru is our relationship with the Guru. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are protocols. Of course, there are things that we do to uplift and hold high the authority of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. We understand that, we recognize that, and everybody wants to do that. Anybody that going there, as you say, that Shraddha, that place of this deep reverence is what we come from. So. And it's very quickly you can destroy that by reacting to it and by doing things that sometimes I see that happens in the Gurdwara. Instead of creating this loving, graceful, holistic space, we create division, we create animosity, we create fear, and so it was a very different place. I mean, when I came to Canada, I continued with my relationship with the Gurdwara. I had learned how to do Path back in Malaysia. I'm an Akhand Pathi, and I do. So when I got here, there weren't a lot of Pathis. So I would go and do Akhand Paths on the weekends at the Gurdwara here at a young age. And that allowed me to connect with that space. But then it was always with this trepidation, this fear that what's going to happen this weekend, where someone's going to yell at me because I left my shoes at the wrong place. And so, stuff like that. So it was very different. So coming to Canada was very different. I had to adjust to it. The culture here was different. Schooling was different. We had uniforms that we wore to school in back in Malaysia. And then you come here and you had to pick out clothes every day. Yeah. And to some extent, you were judged on what you were wearing, right? And there was different groups of people because of how they dressed. So all of those things were, challenges. They were, but as you say, in conflict and so on. But that is also what can, further define who you are. When you're faced with those questions, when you're faced with those decisions, that is also the moment where that test of who you are is going to be that much more important, because as you define yourself, those pathways also open up for you as to, what you are meant for in this life.
You have like beautifully and perfectly answered my next question. So I was going to ask you that as you participated in Visakhi celebrations and as a sevadar in Gurdwara, and how kind of those initial years like helped you to reconnect and like continue being connected to your roots. But yeah, so it was through when you saw the changes, but it was through that realization that you knew from Malaysia mostly that this is what I know of Sikhi. So it's not, so whatever I'm seeing here, it's not gonna change my perspective of it, and then I'm gonna go deep into it rather than like, because I have seen people who disconnect totally when they see, as you said, they are being yelled at, and then they're like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. But you beautifully kind of explained how you
Yeah,
contribute.
I think and I don't blame them either. I mean, there are a lot of young people, and I suspect that in Malaysia, at that younger age, if I had been treated that way by the Granthi, the Gyaniji, and others in the community at the Gurdwara that same way, I probably would look very different today. I probably may not have had the same relationship, but because my father was so involved in the Gurdwara there, he made sure that it was a place that welcomed all, that was available to all, and nothing was outside of our, that we couldn't do. Like we did langar seva, we would do chaur seva, we would wash the carpets, we would wash the gurdwara, we would do all kinds of things, and we were 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. So, and that was our responsibility, and we took it seriously, and we learned responsibility out of that seva. So I think those formative years where I was able to really become connected with what Sikhi is allowed me to have contrast when I came to Canada, and I experienced it in a different way. I'm like, this is not Sikhi. This is not what I've learned. This is not how we are supposed to be. This is not kindness. This is not compassion. This is not love. And so I held on to what I learned in Malaysia, and that's why I, continued to thrive here in this country.
Yeah, and how would you say that because when you saw things were different, then would you share some examples in terms of how did you tried to change the things
Well, I've said it
and
out
make it
loud.
better for
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
generations like
Yeah.
us who came after
Well,
you?
like today, I'm saying it out loud. I'm saying it openly. I've said it in the gurdwaras themselves that when we come to the gurdwara, there's a responsibility as adults and as elders to create a space that is welcoming, that's loving, that embraces all, and not one of judgment. That oh tere aap aaya, oh tere vaal katte, oh tusi aa kita, not a place of judgment. We're not Taliban. Let's not do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Guru Nanak Dev Ji invited everybody. That is why there's Char Darwaje at Harmandir Sahib. We welcome all, and regardless of who you are, regardless of your caste, your religion, your culture, your traditions, everyone's welcome. So, and our Bani starts at Ik Oankar, oneness. And if we don't understand oneness in this infinite creative universe, Oankar, then the rest of the 1430 angs are never going to be ours, because we haven't understood the first two shabads. So when we look at the other person, and we let our bias, our stereotypes, our prejudice be the guiding sort of perspective on who we're talking to, that is exactly the moment we separate ourselves from Ik Oankar. And we're no longer a Sikh at that time, relating to the creation of the Creator. We're now just a human being struggling with our biases, our prejudice, and our discriminatory thoughts when relating to a creation of the Creator. When
Yeah.
Pai Kanhaiya went into, the battlefield
Yeah.
and healed
Hmm.
the enemy, and there was a complaint made against him by the Gursikhs of Guru Gobind Singh's court. And when asked by Guru Gobind Singh why he did that, his answer was, because Guruji, whichever way I look, all I see is you.
Hmm.
And Guruji embraced him for that. If there isn't any bigger example than that, then I don't know what is. If you haven't learned that from that example, then I don't know what more the gurus can
Yeah,
teach
there
us.
couldn't be any. And
Yeah.
I think I'm not very sure, but I think Guruji said that you don't just give them water from now on, you also do the malampati.
Yes,
Yeah,
heal them,
yeah,
support them, bring
yeah.
them back to health.
Hmm.
And so if you can have that kind of compassion and kindness for your enemy that just the day before was killing your people and so-called people, and then not to have that, even that compassion and kindness and patience with our own people within the Gurdwara, with our own children in the Gurdwara, we have gone so far away from
Yeah.
living the life of Sikhi. And I often say to people that the Sikhi is not something that's tested in the good times.
Mm.
Sikhi is what is tested when things are not going our way.
Yeah, exactly. And this also reminds me, I'm taking the interview the other way, but this conversation is just very interesting. So I took this course on Bhagavad Gita, and the thing that you're saying that the people who are killing you the first day, and then you are healing them the next day, and then in that Krishna also like tells Arjun that you're when you're in the battle, you're fighting, that is your dharma, that is your like that is your duty.
Yes,
But you must understand that that duty is also performed without enmity. So
correct.
it's so like astonishing to think that how can you like you perform the duty, you're killing people, but you don't have that feeling of enmity inside you. It's like
Absolutely.
very
You
interesting.
rise, well, this is exactly as you said, living up to your principles and your values, allowing them to be your guide and the foundation and the underpinning of everything that you do, and moving away from your own biases, your own prejudice, and your own shortcomings to determine the event, right? To define the event. So this is the entire teaching of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, our 10 gurus, is to help us become more aware of ourselves, so that as we relate to everything in the world, that we're relating with it from the point of Sikhi, not us. That is
Yeah.
why we have Gurmat and Manmat,
One month. Yeah.
and
Yes.
Gurmukh and Manmukh.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to make sure that your mukh is towards the guru.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So continuing with the topic of belonging and adjustment to the new land. So, how did your struggles kind of inform your sense of Canadian identity, not just as a Sikh, not just the Sikh community in Canada, but how do you see yourself as a Canadian with all the different peoples?
So, look, I mean, the values of Canada, the Charter of Rights, the Constitution, all of the freedoms that we enjoy in this country are absolutely aligned with Sikhi. So it wasn't very hard. It wasn't very difficult. When you begin to understand what Canada stands for and what Canada, espouses to be and is part of Canada's continued effort, is to be a country that respects all, that a country that holds values and principles in high regard, a country rule of law, a country that respects the rights of every being and the ability to be able to be themselves. So all of that is Sikhi. To be honest, I mean, that is exactly what Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, all the gurus spoke about, is how to live a life of integrity, of dignity, of grace, of nobility, and live a life that you are in service to the other. And that's what Canada is all about. So for me, as I learned about Canada, and it became completely clear, the question was, when I asked to remain, in continue to hold my identity as part of my appearance, and be able to continue to practice my faith while serving. And when that first question, when I said no, and I was told no, you can't serve, well, that was the moment where I started to struggle with: is this the Canada that I thought it was? Is this really a country that keeps its promise? Well, a year and a half, 2 years later, when the entire debate was finished, and the words, the ink from that was used to write out the Charter of Rights became a reality for me in my life. Well, then it was proof, it was evidence for me that yes, Canada lives up to its aspirations, it lives up to its promise, it lives up to its commitment to the rule of law. And so from that point onwards, it was easy to, give into this country and make Canada home.
Yeah, yeah. And so going back to the struggles of immigrants. So I read that you have acknowledged that your struggles are just a pale in comparison to the historical hardships that were faced by earlier generations. For example, the Komagata Maru incident and the Asian laborers who worked in the mills and all that. So how do you reconcile your personal journey with this broader collective history, and what responsibility do you feel toward that legacy? And I'm sure that other communities have the similar experiences. We are all immigrants other than the indigenous people of Canada. So what responsibility do you feel towards that legacy, and what would you say that others should too?
Yeah, you've said it best. Canada is a nation of immigrants. Canada is built by immigrants, and Canada has been a country that has thrived because of immigrants. So, Canada is still growing. Canada is still continuing to grow in its capacity to be the very best country in the world. Our work is not yet complete. It's not finished. However, we're moving in the right direction. Now, in that growth, in that maturing, yes, we've had hundreds, over 100-year anniversary celebrations in the decades of where immigrants have had to make significant sacrifices where they were not seen. They were here contributing to, to building of Canada, but they were not equal partners. They didn't have voting rights. They weren't seen. They were treated differently. There was two-tier citizenship, all of that. So those are the things that, when the charter was put in place in 1983, many of those questions were answered. Because once you're a citizen, these are your rights. We all have the same rights. And so that was a moment that really changed and shaped our future trajectory. And the question of, do we belong, was answered at that moment. And since then, we have been, as a country, growing into the charter, growing into this idea of freedoms, growing into this idea of a social contract and how we relate to each other. Is the work done? No. Are we further ahead? Yes. Is there still racism? Absolutely. Is there still division? 100%. And that is the work that we collectively, as Canadians, have to continue to confront. Canada is a land where we celebrate each other. Anything that deviates from that, anything that moves us away from, mutual respect, is a non-Canadian value. That is exactly where you stop being a Canadian. When you harbor any type of behavior, attitude, feelings, emotions that move you away from the Charter, the Constitution, the rights of individuals, and respecting the other, is exactly what Canada is not, and what Canadians cannot be. So I think that's as simple as answers I can give when it comes to our struggles. But the Canadian struggle isn't done yet. We still have some work to do.
Yeah, but I think as you mentioned, we can safely say that maybe how your struggles were nothing in comparison to the struggles before you, and similarly, our struggles are nothing in comparison to yours. Like because you became the first officer to wear turban at RCMP, and that was in 1991. It was almost 10 years before I was born, and I also learned that you had to go through the name callings, your house being egged. So we don't see, although as you said, the racism is still there, but it's not that common these days. So I think we it's safe to call it a win that we are moving towards the future where our struggles like keep becoming paler and paler in comparison to the ones before us.
Yeah, and that's I think a measure of our success, and that's a
Mhm.
measure of success that all Canadians can celebrate.
Yeah.
That we're moving away from hatred, away from division, and not standing for that. We're making it a commonplace for people to be judged on merit in their abilities and skills, not on their skin color, their faith, their culture, or background. And we have our own struggles in Sikhi. We still have the struggle of casteism. There still continues to be prejudice and discrimination with certain members of the Sikh community because they're a particular caste. So it's not just Canada. We also have to look internally into our own community, into our own culture, and begin to call that out. So there's work to be done on all fronts. But at the end, what do we go back to? What underpins it all? In Sikhi, we have values and principles and rules that we follow and requirements and also expectations of our gurus and our teachings on how we behave and how we interact with the world. Well, that's the same thing with Canada. We have the charter, we have the constitution, we have laws, we have rules that require us to be a part of a larger social contract where we expect that the other person is going to be law-abiding and a good citizen and is going to hold that social contract, to heart.
Yeah, yeah. So my last question to you is, you have kind of already touched on this, but what would be your message to the new generation of immigrants who are kind of still figuring out what they are in this land? And I often hear people saying that, oh, I would just go back to Punjab. I don't feel like I belong here. And then, so what would be the suggestion you give from your experiences that this new generation can learn, that how they need to, if they as from your experiences, it's kind of clear, if you put effort into it, the system kind of molds and you feel that belonging. But what would you say?
Yeah, well, I would say a lot of things. I would say this: if you're looking for an easy pass, yeah, absolutely, go back to Punjab. You're not going to get that here. I had to work in the farms. I was a laborer. We worked hard. I was a security guard for a number of years. I was a jail guard for a number of years. I studied at the same time. Nothing comes easy. But this is a land of opportunity. If you're prepared to, and I give this same advice to my children. When my daughter started working in a gas station, I told her, I said, here are the rules. You're going to go there 20 minutes early. And if they ask you to do 3 things, you're going to do 10, because 7 things are things that you're going to have to figure out what else needs to be done. And then when you quit, you're going to leave 15 minutes after you quit. And that is going to be your legacy. That's going to be who they remember, because that's your first reference. And that's the same thing that was taught to me by my father. And when I worked as a laborer in the farms, that was my first reference. So when the RCMP called that person and said, what kind of worker was he? They didn't care that I was picking berries. They didn't care what kind of job I had. They wanted to know what my character was. right? So what is your character? And define your character, build your character. And that takes work. Nothing happens, automatically. People want to know you, people want to understand you. So what is your brand? What is your character? What do you stand for? And that requires effort. You need to volunteer, you need to do different things, and you need to keep a positive, and outlook on life. And then what are your values? What do you stand for? When I say to somebody, and if you go to my daughters, because I taught them this and we spoke about it, if you say to them, Onkar, Rasna, what are your values? They'll be able to, without thinking about it, say our values are dignity, integrity, nobility, and grace. Ding. Right? Because we talk about that. We shared that. We discussed it. And so if they were ever questioned about it, and that's what we do, is it, our actions dignified? Are they integrity? Are they noble? Or are they graceful? If they're not, we don't do it. If they are, we carry on. So what guides you? So I would say to the new generation that has chosen Canada as a home, Canada is a land of opportunity. There's so much opportunity here. Are you the right person for that opportunity is the question. It's not the other way around. Yeah. It's not, is Canada right for me? The question is, are you right for Canada? Right? And because the opportunity is here. We came here with $400 in our pocket, and other people came with much less. And some people came here, not knowing a word of English, and today they are thriving, because what does not, ever fail is hard work, commitment, living a life of values, living a life of principles. You will get noticed in this country. And the question is, are you prepared to put in the work? If you are, there are rewards that will come your way. If you're not, then don't blame the country. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, where did you fail? What have you not done? So I would say that to young people, hustle. This is the time to hustle. I'm still hustling. I'm, going to be 60 years old this year, and I'm still hustling. I haven't given up. I sit on boards. I do volunteer work. I go out and meet with the community wherever I can do seva. I do seva. I still do kirtan. So I'm still hustling. Because
that's how being a true Sikh, right? Because you keep learning. You're supposed to keep learning. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. You're supposed to keep learning. You're supposed to keep engaged. You're supposed to keep doing, hustle. Do whatever you can. And have a daily practice. Sit with yourself every day. Start with Japji every day. Start with Simran every day. If you don't have a daily practice, if you don't have something that you commit to, and I often say this to folks. I mean, if somebody is, working and going to the gym and doing different things every day, well, your body doesn't get built in one day. You have to commit to it. You have to make a practice. You have to do it regularly. Then it becomes who you are. Then people can look at you and say, oh yeah, right. You have a practice. You work out. You look after yourself. Sikhi is no different. If you don't sit with Japji every day, then don't expect Japji to be there for you every day. Really that simple. And when you do Japji every day, don't just do Japji every day, live Japji every day. And that is what will set you apart from everyone else. Because character, values, principles are the things that define people, that people, that's what shines when you look at and talk to people, and that comes through. So I would also say to all of the folks that in the young generation, and we have a huge problem now with the extortion files and what's going on. And, young people, I understand, I have compassion for, many, because the laws have changed here, and some of the, permits are being canceled and so on. And it may not have worked out as you thought it might, and things are shifting. Well, things continuously shift. Where when the doors opened up 4, 5, 6 years ago, and there was a big mass of students and young people that came to this country. Well, those rules changed as well, and then things started to shift because the infrastructure here and some of the services weren't ready for all of that, and Canada and the government realized, well, maybe we made some mistakes. We need to adjust, and so they're changing some of those rules where some students are not going to qualify and they're going to have to go back. But at the end of the day, those rules may change again in 3, 4, 5 years. And so do you really want to today destroy your character by getting involved in illegal activity or any type of activity that is going to be a part of your history, your legacy, your character, that 5 years down the road, when the opportunity comes again, you will not qualify because of what you've done today.
Exactly.
So what I say to young people is that, don't sell yourself to the moment, and don't compromise your values, the teachings of our gurus. Don't compromise your character. Don't compromise the values of your family. It is okay to eat once a day.
Yeah.
It is okay to eat once a day, to live modestly, not have a TV, and have to take the bus. But I would rather have that than to live, well, but without your principles, without your values, without your character, and be a disgrace to all of that, and disgrace to your family legacy and all that we stand for. So I appeal, I understand, I have a lot of compassion for young people, but that does not mean that I sympathize or excuse any type of behavior that is harmful to themselves and others, and challenges the security of public safety here in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess on that awesome note, we are going to end because there's nothing more that could be said. It was great talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Gurleen, thank you very much. I wish you the very, very best, and continue doing what you're doing. Obviously you've done fantastic, and really have committed yourself to a life of service and other work. Wishing you the very, very best.